Alex Hormozi has generated over $200 million across his portfolio of companies using sales strategies that completely break the rules that most salespeople follow. And I spent the last week dissecting his entire sales approach and compiling his most effective strategies to explain in this video. Now, Hormozi's been a huge inspiration for me. I used to obsessively watch a lot of his videos and apply the things I was learning. And these strategies have allowed me to go on and earn hundreds of thousands of dollars as a salesperson. It's allowed me to manage multi-7 and 8-figure sales teams. And it also allowed me to become one of Tai Lopez's all-time top closers back in 2023. Now here's the thing, Alex's techniques work because he's mastered the fundamentals, and not only that, but he knows how to apply them effectively in a sales context without even thinking, right? Like, so many people watch Alex's videos and they see the reels and the YouTube stuff, but they don't know how to actually apply it. And the reason why is because they don't understand the fundamental why behind what they're actually doing. The strategy breakdowns that I'm going to show you aren't just regurgitated theory from his videos, but I'm actually going to be going deep into why these things work, and you can apply these strategies to then go on and make a lot of money in whatever sales environment it is that you're working in. Alex has 5 core sales principles that he used to make that 200 million. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining exactly how I've interpreted and implemented them to go on and build a multi-million-dollar sales career and train hundreds of closers in the process. And we're breaking all of those things down. That way you can take it, apply it, and hit those 10, 20, 50, and even $100,000 months working in sales. So the first technique that Alex talks about is the proof, promise, plan framework. And this is essentially the opposite of what a lot of other salespeople do, where they start out their sales conversations with a bunch of meaningless small talk BS, where both parties know that they don't care about how the weather is or where they're based, but everybody just does it anyways, right? This approach is cool because you hook your prospect immediately with proof of what you've accomplished before, the promise that you're going to make to them, within the sales context, and then also what you're going to be doing next to actually help them get to that end result.
So I actually think a lot about proof, promise, plan, just like we do for YouTube videos, just like we do for short content, because humans are still humans, their attention still works the same way. And just like the opener to a piece of content can dictate how well the entire video goes or how likely someone is to pay attention, the same thing is true about how you open a sales call.
Now this is good because it sets a professional tone immediately, establishes a lot of authority and evidence, obviously, because you're starting out the call with a big claim, and it also allows you to take a lot of authority because your prospect, obviously, they're there to get that result, and you're outlining exactly what's going to happen next in the conversation, letting them just allow you to take the lead. Now, I do partially disagree with this approach. I remember when Alex was talking about this, and I think this is really effective on YouTube videos, for example, but with specific kinds of prospects, when you start out the call with a big claim and a big, bold statement, a lot of the times it's just going to throw them off and it's going to make them feel like you're trying to sell them on something, right? The reason why your prospect is on the sales call is because they already saw a bunch of proof, evidence, case studies, testimonials. And these days, everybody has those things. So hopping on a sales call and just leading with more proof and making more big claims with specific kinds of prospects, that's going to turn them off. And it actually gives them an opportunity to be skeptical about it and poke holes into, okay, if they guarantee this big result, how do I know that it's going to work for me, right? So I think this works, but what you don't want to do is start out your call with a big, massive claim and where they're like, holy shit, what's going on here, right? You want to do this matter of fact. So something along the lines of, hey, if you made it to this call, you probably took some time to go through our previous case studies, testimonials, and the types of results we got for other people. Okay, great. Well, my goal here on this call is to help you accomplish that same result. Now, for us to do that, really, I want to take some time to start out with a couple questions, get to know a bit more about you, and really make sure that we can help you here. Is that cool with you? As opposed to, hey, so we've worked with 1,000 people and helped all of them make 100 grand a month. Now on this call, I want to make sure that we can help you get that same result. For us to do that, I'm just going to start out with a couple questions and make sure that you'd be a good fit, right? The big, bold claim, I think it's a little bit unnecessary, but I do like with starting out with just matter of fact, hey, this is what we've done for other people. This is the kinds of result that we've got. Now, I just want to make sure that we can help you get that result, right? It kind of changes the frame and it flips the whole qualifying thing from, I'm not trying to sell you, I need you to sell me on why you would be a good fit within our company because our stuff has already worked for a bunch of other people. But once you properly opened up the sales call and established the right frame, you need to be able to use that as an opportunity and that control that you just got to get straight into your prospect's pain and the reason why they're actually here. Because that ultimate goal, yes, people want it, but really what's going to motivate people is not getting to the goal, but it's getting away from pain. And I really like the way that Alex talks about this. The second strategy that Alex talks about, he calls the pain cycle, okay? Where most closers and most salespeople, they will sell really hard on benefits and deliverables. Alex will do the opposite. He talks about things like deprivation is motivation and the pain is the pitch. Instead of selling them on the upside, he'll actually amplify the downside of staying in the same position.
If I am hungry, I am motivated to eat. If I'm tired, I'm deprived of sleep, means I'm motivated to sleep. If I haven't seen my wife in a few days, I might be motivated to do other things. You get the idea. If you're deprived, you are by definition motivated to end the deprivation. And so what we want to do in the sales call is basically expand the deprivation. We want to bring their state of deprivation to top of mind so that in the moment we can increase their deprivation, which then rubber bands back to increasing motivation to solve it.
And this is where most closers fuck this up, is because you gotta understand that pain is always a stronger motivation than pleasure. Right? And the problem is that pain is kind of uncomfortable to talk about, right? Like humans naturally, they're going to try to repress their pain. They don't want to get into it. And they're going to tell you about the things that they're working towards, right? And an amateur closer will hear something on a call like, hey, I want to make more money, right? And they're like, okay, great. And then they'll sell them this crazy solution of, hey, here's how you're going to make more money within the business, right? And then they end up with, I want to think about it. I want to talk to my wife. I'm going to do more research when they're looking at their big price tag, because the pain of staying in the same position doesn't exceed that price tag. It doesn't exceed the uncomfort of actually doing something about this. So let's get into some of Alex's main points. So he talks about a couple of things here. Number one is you get into their current situation and what they've tried before, right? So you'll collect the facts, right? You're doing some discovery here. The next thing that you want to do is a lot of the times when you'll talk to your prospect, you'll hear about things that they've tried before, but they'll kind of downplay it. Or even in some cases where they're already currently working on a business or they're already currently doing something, but they won't really talk about what's going wrong, or they'll act like things aren't as bad as they actually are, right? Because they know that, hey, I'm in a sales call here and like I don't want to open up about my pain, like I just mentioned a second ago, right? I remember one of my mentors used to tell me, if someone is on a sales call with you, they have a problem. Like nobody goes through this entire funnel, application, scheduling a call for no reason, right? So, you got to understand that every single previous attempt was a failure simply because they are on the call now, because they haven't been able to solve the problem yet, right? So that's kind of evidence for you that there's always going to be some kind of pain there. It's just on you to ask the right questions to actually find it. Now, one of the things that I like that Alex does is like he'll actually calculate the cost of staying in the same position. He says this a lot where, it's costing you $1 million a year not to know how to make $1 million a year, right? And it's a really cool reframe because, it turns that $1 million a year rather than a gain, now it's a loss. It is costing you $1 million a year to not know how to actually do that, right? And when you think about it from that approach, it creates a sense of internal urgency, right? Now let me talk about how I've actually used these into a high ticket sales context and how we use this to close deals. There's 3 specific sections that we want to hit when we're going about our prospect's pain, okay? Number 1 is we want to drill deep into our prospect's current pain. Usually I'll start out with some basic discovery. The moment that I find some kind of a surface level pain point, when I hear a word that's used, when I hear just a subtle clue that something's not right here, I'll dig deep. So for example, if someone says, hey, yeah, I'm working in this industry right now and things have been kind of inconsistent recently, so I'm just looking for something to do on the side, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. And you mentioned things have been kind of inconsistent recently. Like, what do you actually mean by that, right? I want to turn that surface level pain point, I want to get specific on it, right? All of a sudden now they open up, yeah, well, like it's been really hard because, 6 months ago I was having all-time months, but, since then it's been all downhill. Oh, wow. How's that affected you personally? We get deep into it. All of a sudden, an inconsistent income turns into daily stress of not knowing where the next sale is going to come from, time away from family, not being present, et cetera, right? So we drill deep on the present pain. The next thing that we do is we get into the time experience. Think about this like an equation. It's going to be present pain multiplied by time experience. A lot of people will ask this next question too early, and because they didn't drill deep on pain enough, it's not as effective, right? So like we want that present pain. We want to go as deep as humanly possible. The moment that we've done that, okay, great. So how long has that actually been going on for? Yeah, it's been 5 years, right? Gotcha. So it's been 5 years where you've been dealing with, the inconsistent income, the time away from family, the constant stress because you don't know when your next client is going to come in. Is that right? Okay, gotcha. So like, for you, what was really the turning point that made you realize you want to do something about this? That's going to be the third step, right? Is where we figure out what was the turning point? What was the moment? Because usually if someone's been experiencing some kind of pain or problem for a long time, there was a moment where they said, all right, fuck this. I need to do something about it, right? It might have been if someone's working some kind of 9 to 5 and you're selling some sort of online business opportunity, whatever. It might have been like they might have known that they've wanted to make a change for years, but it was like a conversation with their boss. or an argument they had with their partner. That was really the turning point, right? So present pain multiplied by time experienced, and then add the turning point to actually make the change. Once we found those three things, we have our pain, we have what we need, we can move on to the next step. Now, Alex's next principle is that whoever asks the question controls the conversation, right? A lot of the time, salespeople will invite questions from their prospect, and they'll say things like, hey, do you have any questions about that, right? Or when your prospects are asking you questions, they'll feel the need to answer them because, a lot of salespeople think that their job is to, educate and give information, and they think that this is giving value on a call, when in reality, you just lose complete control over the conversation. And if you don't have control over the conversation, then you don't have control over the outcome of the conversation. And that's what we want to be able to get really good at in sales, right? And I like the way that Alex explains this. He always gets super dark with his analogies. But he says, when you're in an interrogation and you watch a movie, someone's getting interrogated, the guy will be like, I'm the one asking the questions here, right? Because he wants to maintain control.
So there's a reason that when you're in an interrogation, they're like, I'm asking the questions here. It's because the person asking the questions is the one who's in control. You're the one who's leading the sale.
Now, Alex had a couple main points there. Number one is that questions guide the direction of the conversation. Answers don't. You cannot disagree with the question. It's impossible, but you can definitely disagree with a statement, right? So if I want to make a statement on my call, if I want to get a point across, I'm not going to say my point. I'm going to ask a question that leads my prospect to the point to let them come to that conclusion. And, when your prospect asks you questions, you want to always respond with questions for them, okay? So, here's kind of the approach, right? First off, whenever you get questions from your prospect throughout the sales conversation, especially before the pitch, right? After you've already taken control of a call, you set the agenda and you let your prospect know that, hey, I'm gonna, ask you a series of questions here to see if we can help you out. If in the middle of that, they start trying to dominate the call and they start trying to flip it on you, that means one of two things. Either number one, your confidence isn't really there on the call. They don't really see you as an expert. They see you as just a shitty salesperson and they're trying to dominate it. Or two, they might just have that type of a personality. So, first off, if you're getting a lot of this, I would probably look at just your overall call presence and your confidence throughout the conversation. But, people have questions and sometimes people are really eager, right? Sometimes you'll hear people start out conversations with, hey, I have a full piece of paper with a bunch of questions written down and I'd love to go over them on this call. Okay, great, for sure. And we'll definitely jump into some of those things and I'm sure we'll answer a lot of them on the way here. First, what I like to do is really just get a better understanding of where you're at right now, where you want to go, and make sure that we can actually help. Is that cool? Okay, great. I would kind of deflect something like that, right? Let's say middle of the call, they start saying, okay, great. So how many people have you guys actually worked with when it comes to this? Yeah, that's a great question, right? Number one, we're going to acknowledge it. Number two is you always want to understand why they're actually asking, right? Just out of curiosity, why do you ask? Because the reason why they might be asking, they might just be purely curious as to how many people you're actually working with. Or maybe they were in a previous program where they had thousands of people and they were lost in the mix, right? Or the other case, they might have been in a program where there was 2 people and they didn't have the community that they actually want. So it's we need to understand why that question is being asked for us to properly answer it. First off, why do you ask? Yeah, no, just curious, really. Okay, great, gotcha. And just out of curiosity, because we do have a couple of different levels to what we do. Is there a certain amount of involvement and community that you're actually looking for? We respond to their question with a question. Then we get what they're actually looking for, and then maybe at that point we'll actually answer. Or here's another really good one. Whenever your prospect asks you, hey, so how soon will I actually be able to see a result? This might be more in the buying stage of the call. How soon can I actually see the result here? Yeah, that's a great question. Just out of curiosity, why do you ask? Yeah, well, obviously it's a big investment and I want to make sure that, I get a return on my investment as soon as possible, obviously. Okay, gotcha. And is there kind of a timeline that you have in mind of when you would want to see that result? Yeah, I'd love to get there within at least 30 days. Okay, great, gotcha. Well, here's an example of one of our clients who got there within 30 days. And here are the exact steps that he actually took to get there, right? Now, it is going to be a little bit more required on your end. Is that something that you're willing to do? Okay, great, gotcha. And if you follow the same process as that person did and you put in the same amount of work, do you feel confident you'd be able to get the same result, right? So it's notice how almost everything there was all questions and I'm leading my prospect to the exact same conclusion as opposed to just saying, hey, well, you can see results within 30 days. You just have to do this, right? I want my prospect to come to that conclusion. And again, you can't disagree with questions, but you can disagree with statements. Now, when you're getting those buyer questions at the end of the call, you might answer them perfectly. You might implement what I just mentioned there effectively, but you're still going to get an objection right there at the end, okay? Alex has a specific framework when it comes to objection handling. He calls it the acknowledge, associate, and ask, the AAA framework. And what this allows you to do is overcome objections without creating that like me versus you dynamic. And it really allows you to decrease a lot of the sales resistance when you're moving through objection handling.
Whenever someone asks you a question or they give you some sort of objection, you want to follow the AAA framework. And I realized this only years into teaching sales, that this is what separated my top salespeople from my mediocre salespeople. And they did it naturally and I never caught it.
So 3 main points that Alex has. Number 1 is acknowledge what your prospect just said. Number 2 is associate what they just said and their objection with a positive character trait that's associated with them actually buying. And 3 is ask the next question to maintain control and authority like we just spoke about a second ago, okay? Now, when it comes to acknowledging the objection, the thing is you gotta understand, people do not want to be proven wrong. It's not a comfortable feeling, People want to be correct. And especially with a stranger on the internet who's trying to get them to spend a lot of money on something, right? They're not going to want to be proven wrong, right? So when you just jump straight into your scripted rebuttal, scripted objection handle, without even acknowledging what they just said, like instantly you're communicating, you're like, I don't really care about your concern, you're wrong, and let me explain why you're wrong, right? And you might execute that perfectly, but just because you created that little dynamic and you didn't acknowledge what they just said, like, I don't know about you, but personally, like, I'm stubborn. If someone doesn't even hear me out and they don't acknowledge what I just said, like, I'm not gonna listen to whatever it is that you just said. And most people are gonna be that way, right? So it's very simple, but just starting out your, whenever you get an objection, yeah, gotcha, totally understand, right? Drop your tone, speak calmly, maybe slow down your speech, gotcha. Totally understand where you're coming from there, right? Very simple. Next, we want to associate their objection with a character trait that is going to be associated with them actually buying our program, right? Being the type of person who is successful. So for example, if someone has the objection of, hey, well, it's a lot of money and I just want to carefully consider this and talk to a bunch of other businesses over the next week to, see if this would be the best fit. Can I get back to you then? Like, hey, absolutely. Yeah, totally. No problem at all. And, it really seems like to me, like obviously this is a big step for you. You're spending a good amount of money here. You just want to make sure that you make the best decision for you, right? And you just want to make sure that any investment that you do make, you're obviously going to get to the result that you want. Cool. So I just reframed this objection of, hey, I want to go speak to 100 companies. I just reframed that. So you just want to be absolutely sure you're going to get to the result that you want, right? The companies thing, I can't really handle, but the certainty that they can get to their result, I can absolutely handle. I can increase that, right? Or 2, if someone is just uncomfortable, wow, this is a big step, I want to do it, but it's just like super scary and I just don't know what to do, right? Yeah, gotcha, totally understand, and I know you mentioned it's your first time getting into it, completely get where you're coming from, and like even just the fact that you have some of those nerves right now, like that tells me that like you really care about your success with this. All of those case studies that you saw coming into this call, every single one of them like had that exact feeling that you're feeling right now. So I just associated that also with previous successful clients that we worked with, right? So you can do that too. Now, the third step of this framework is I'll ask the next question. Now, let me ask you, all of those, successful case studies, when they felt that feeling of nervousness, what do you think their decision-making process was in that moment? Yeah, well, even though they were nervous, they probably acted regardless, right? And like the version of yourself that you're trying to become who accomplishes all of those goals you told me about a second ago, like, are they the type of person to feel uncomfortable and then shy away from it and delay something? Or are they the kind of person who they feel uncomfortable and then they do it anyways because they know that that's what they need to do to get to where they want to be? Yeah, I guess that's what they would do. Okay, gotcha. So what do you think you should do here? Now, the goal isn't to like overcome objections. You don't want to think about it that way. You want to think about it as, number 1 is like we want to deeply understand what the objection actually is, because the first thing that comes out of your prospect's mouth usually isn't the real objection. There's usually something 2 or 3 levels deeper than that. And then once we find that, is just reframe that into an objection or a concern that we can actually handle and overcome, as opposed to, some kind of smoke screen that just isn't really real, right? Now, once you've properly handled the objection, there's still another step here, which is to ask for the sale. And a lot of closers just expect that once they go through their objection handling framework, that people are just going to whip out their credit card and ask for where they pay. And some people do that, right? Now, this leads us into our last principle from Alex, which is he who asks the most times gets the most sales.
When you ask wrong, usually loses you sales, and because they don't want to talk to you anymore. And so if they get into a bad mood, they don't buy. And so how do you reconcile asking a lot of times, closing the most sales, with when you ask wrong, people stop wanting to talk to you, therefore you can't ask more times. What bridges this? Rapport. And so the reason this is so important,
a lot of people will go through their objection handling process and then they'll forget to ask for the sale. They just expect their prospect to be like, hey, where do I pay? Fine, let's do it, right? And sometimes, yes, that does happen, but you need to be able to ask for the sale. And in a lot of cases, you have to be able to ask for the sale multiple times. What Alex is saying there is most closers ask for the sale maybe once on a call. They don't get the response that they want, and then they give up. And what he's saying is that you should take 5 to 7 times you should ask for the sale. And you should be taking different approaches, using different triggers, and eventually they're going to crack. Now, this is one of the points that I slightly disagree with Alex on, and I would take a different approach. First off, the way that our objection handling framework works, like we have a framework that we use, and if you want it, send me a DM, I'll send you over the doc. It's used where when we get to the end of the framework, and then we ask for the sale, and if they give us another objection, we can recycle the framework, and then we can go through it once again. But if you're doing that 5 to 7 times, either you're doing a terrible job of understanding what the objection is, or 2, you're doing a terrible job of handling it and you're just on the phone with some like stubborn motherfucker who just wants to go back and forth with you for 30 minutes because he has time to do that, right? You should not be doing this when you're after the pitch. The beauty in sales is that you can prevent basically all objections from coming up before you even tell somebody what you're offering, especially when you get really good at this, right? So what you want to be doing is not asking for the sale 5 to 7 times. What you want to be doing is asking for certain micro commitments and even like bigger commitments throughout the process, right? So, for example, when we're earlier on in the sales conversation and we find out why our prospect hasn't accomplished what they actually want, right? Like we find the limiting belief, the excuses, the problems, etc. I might ask my prospect, hey, and like, are you actually at a place where you're ready to move past those things, right? That fear of failure that you've been experiencing the last couple of years, like, are you actually at a place where you're ready to completely move past that? Okay, great, for sure. Because getting to your goal and getting to where you want to be, like that's going to require you to step into a completely different person, right? Like we can help you when it comes to the how, but I need you to focus on the who. Can I count on you to make that decision, to step into that new version of yourself? Do you feel prepared for that? Okay, gotcha. And like, hey, I know you mentioned earlier in our conversation that, you're working a lot of hours, you're super busy. Like for us to help you get to this result, I'm going to need you to show up every day and spend a couple hours on this, right? It's probably going to mean you're going to have to cut out a little bit of sleep, a little bit of personal time, family time even. Is that something that you're willing to do, right? So I might ask those questions, maybe not necessarily in that order, but I'll gain commitments to help them overcome previous limiting beliefs and excuses that have held them back in the past, right? I'll get them to gain commitments to really make that identity shift and make a decision to change. I'll gain commitments to the amount of hours and time that they have to put in towards the business. Here's actually how I set it up right before the pitch. So I would ask my prospect the question of, hey, so what is it exactly that you're looking for from a support system to get to where you want to be, right? They'll tell me what they're looking for. Okay, great. And that pretty closely aligns with what we do. I want to get into it here in a second, but I mean, let me ask you this, like as long as everything does align with what you're looking for and you feel confident that it's going to get you to where you want to be, how soon are you actually looking to move forward with this, right? So what I'm doing, number one, is a hypothetical. As long as everything is perfect, how soon do you want to get started? If you just say, how soon do you want to get started? They'll say, well, how do I know if it's something I want to do, right? So that little section right there is important. But 2 is I'm preventing a lot of delay objections and things like that, right? So it's like, I'll ask for my 5 to 7 commitments earlier on in the sales call. And what happens is like when someone is committed to all of those things genuinely, then all of a sudden the big price tag that I have for them at the end of the call becomes pretty minor in comparison to all the other commitments that they just made, right? I want to be asking for like micro sales throughout the entire conversation. And as long as I can get those, I can almost guarantee that by the time I'm presenting that they're going to say yes to my offer. So that's it, guys. Those are the 5 principles that I've used from Alex and that have helped me tremendously in my career. But here's the thing though, just understanding them and watching this video makes you one of millions of other people who just watch videos like this and mentally masturbate to being successful and learning skills. You don't learn skills by just watching videos and consuming content, but you learn skills by 1, watching videos and consuming content, applying it in practice, right? And then getting feedback on what you're actually doing, right? This is something that you want to take these things, note them down, and then get actionable about how you actually implement them into your game, okay? The reality is Alex's techniques work because he's mastered the fundamentals of sales that most people completely ignore. But watching this video and actually becoming a killer closer are 2 very different things. Now, you can try to take everything you've learned in this video and jam it into your current sales process and figure it out through trial and error, or you can just copy and paste exactly how we did that and implement it and go make a bunch of money with it. I'm actually giving away our 10-step sales framework that's been responsible for over 40 million in high ticket sales revenue. I'm giving it away in the description down below. Feel free to pick that up. This is going to take real work, but as long as you're committed to it, you'll be able to see results with it. The choice is yours. That's it for this video. You have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.